Marcus Chen had always believed that the universe was vast and empty, filled with nothing but cold stars and dead planets. That belief shattered the moment he saw the massive ship descending through Earth's atmosphere like a black dagger cutting through clouds. The ship was unlike anything humanity had ever built. Its surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating an unsettling void against the blue sky. Strange symbols pulsed along its hull with a deep red glow, and the air around it shimmered with an energy that made Marcus's skin crawl. He stood on the observation deck of the International Space Station monitoring outpost, watching through reinforced glass as the alien vessel settled into orbit. As the lead xenobiologist for the United Earth Defense Force, Marcus had spent years preparing for this moment. First contact, the day that would change everything. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported Lieutenant Sarah Webb, her voice tight with tension. "It's not directed at our governments or military installations. The signal is specifically targeting you, Dr. Chen." Marcus turned from the window, his dark eyes reflecting the red glow from the alien ship. "That's impossible. How could they know who I am?" "The transmission is on a frequency that bypasses all our communication networks. It's coming directly to your personal neural implant," Webb continued, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "Whatever technology they're using, it's beyond anything we understand." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. His neural implant was military-grade, designed for deep space research and completely secure. The fact that an unknown alien species could access it meant their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's. "Put it through," he said, steeling himself for whatever was about to happen. The voice that filled his mind was like liquid silk laced with danger. It spoke in perfect English, but with an accent that seemed to come from no earthly place. "Marcus Chen of the human species," the voice purred. "I am Lyra Lai, Queen of the Valtharian Empire, ruler of 7 star systems, and sovereign of the ancient bloodline. For 1,000 years, I have searched the galaxy for one like you. At last, my search has ended." Marcus felt his heart racing. The other scientists and military personnel on the station gathered around him, their faces pale with a mixture of fear and fascination. Through the viewing ports, the alien ship seemed to pulse with life, as if responding to the Queen's words. "I don't understand," Marcus replied, speaking aloud so his team could hear his side of the conversation. "What do you want from me?" "Want?" The Queen's laughter echoed in his mind like the sound of silver bells mixed with distant thunder. "I do not want human. I claim. You possess something that no other being in this galaxy has ever possessed, something that calls to me across the void of space." The ship began to move closer to the station, and Marcus could see details that defied explanation. The hull wasn't made of metal or any material he recognized. It looked organic, almost alive, with veins of that same red energy pulsing through it like a heartbeat. "Dr. Chen," Webb whispered urgently. "Long-range sensors are picking up an entire fleet behind that ship, hundreds of vessels, all maintaining formation." Marcus's blood ran cold. This wasn't just first contact. This was an invasion force. "You bring an armada to my world and speak of claiming me," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "That sounds like a threat." "Not a threat, my destined one. A promise." The Queen's voice grew warmer, almost affectionate. "I am Valtharian. Your species would call us vampires, though that word carries crude connotations that do not apply to our kind. We are beings of energy and essence, sustained by the life force of others. For millennia, we have ruled through fear and power." Through the viewport, Marcus could see smaller ships detaching from the main vessel, heading directly toward the station. His team scrambled to emergency positions, but he knew their weapons would be useless against technology this advanced. "But you," the Queen continued. You are different. Your life essence burns with a light I have never encountered. It does not flee from my presence as all others do. Instead, it reaches out, calls to me, challenges me. In 1,000 years of existence, no being has ever done that. I'm just a scientist, Marcus protested, backing away from the viewport as the alien shuttles approached. There's nothing special about me. You are human, she replied, and he could hear something like wonder in her mental voice. And humans, I am beginning to understand, are far from ordinary. The station shook as the alien shuttles attached to the docking ports. Emergency alarms blared throughout the corridors. But Marcus knew there was nowhere to run. In the distance, he could see Earth, blue and beautiful and completely helpless against the force that had come for him. My queen, Marcus said, surprising himself by using her title. If it's me you want, then let my people go. Don't harm my world. Harm your world? The Queen sounded genuinely puzzled. Why would I destroy something so precious? Your planet birthed you, shaped you into what you are. I would no more harm Earth than I would willingly wound myself. The station's lights flickered as alien energy interfaced with human technology. Through the internal cameras, Marcus could see figures moving through the corridors. They were tall and elegant, with pale skin that seemed to glow with inner light. Their eyes burned with the same red energy that pulsed through their ships. And when they moved, it was with a fluid grace that was both beautiful and predatory. They're not harming anyone, Webb reported in amazement. The intruders are just walking. They're ignoring everyone else and heading straight for this section. Marcus felt a strange calm settle over him. His fear was still there, but it was joined by something else. Curiosity. This queen, this Lyrelay, had searched for him specifically. She claimed he was different, special in some way. As a scientist, he couldn't help but want to understand why. What makes humans different? He asked. Everything, came the immediate response. Your species is young, barely crawled from your birth world, yet you burn with an intensity that ancient races have forgotten. You face impossible odds and still fight. You stare into the abyss and make jokes about it. You are simultaneously fragile and indestructible. The airlock to the observation deck cycled open, and she walked in. Queen Lyrelay was beautiful in the way that a sword is beautiful, deadly, perfect, and absolutely terrifying. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin like polished marble and hair that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Her dress appeared to be woven from shadows and crimson fire, shifting and flowing around her like a living thing. But it was her eyes that captured Marcus completely. They were the deep red of fresh blood, but they held the wisdom of ages and something that looked almost like hope. Hello, Marcus Chen, she said with her physical voice, which was even more captivating than her mental one. I have traveled across the galaxy to find you. Marcus found his voice, though it took effort. And now that you've found me? She smiled, revealing teeth that were perfectly normal except for the slightly elongated canines. Now I make you an offer that no human has ever received. Become my eternal mate, my equal, and rule beside me over an empire that spans the stars. Share in my power, my immortality, and my domain. And if I refuse? Her smile didn't waver, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. No one has ever refused me, Marcus Chen. I am not certain what would happen if you did. The honesty in her response surprised him. Here was a being of immense power, a queen who had ruled for 1,000 years, and she was admitting uncertainty. It was almost human. I need time to think, he said. Time, she mused, as if the concept was foreign to her. Very well. You have until your planet completes 1 rotation around its axis, 24 of your hours. But know this, Marcus Chen, I will not leave without you. Your destiny lies among the stars, not trapped on this single world. She turned to leave, her retinue of elegant, dangerous beings falling into step behind her. At the airlock, she paused and looked back. Oh, and Marcus, you might want to consider the alternative. If you are not my mate, you will eventually become my enemy, and I have never had an enemy who remained alive for very long. With that, she was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of ozone and starlight. The alien ships withdrew to a respectful distance, but they remained in orbit, a constant reminder of the choice Marcus had to make. Webb approached him carefully. "Dr. Chen? What are you going to do?" Marcus stared out at the alien fleet, then down at Earth far below. Somewhere down there were his colleagues, his friends, his sister and her children, everyone he had ever known or cared about. And now their fate might rest in his hands. "I'm going to do what humans do best," he said quietly. "I'm going to find a third option." The next 24 hours would determine not just Marcus's fate, but the future of humanity itself. The alien vampire queen had made her offer, but Marcus Chen was about to show her that humans had a few surprises of their own. Marcus spent the first 3 hours of his deadline doing what he did best: research. The station's quantum computers hummed with activity as he dove into every piece of data they had on energy signatures, biological anomalies, and the strange readings the alien ships were giving off. "There," he said, pointing to a readout that made Lieutenant Webb's eyes widen. "Look at the energy patterns coming from their ships. They're not just technology. They're feeding." Webb leaned closer to examine the data. "Feeding on what?" "Everything," Marcus replied grimly. "Solar radiation, cosmic background energy, even the electromagnetic fields from our own equipment. But look at this." He highlighted a section of the readout that showed an anomaly. "When Queen Lyra was near me, the feeding pattern changed. Instead of drawing energy in, something was pushing back." "Something inside you?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Remember what she said about my life essence burning differently? I think she was being literal. Humans might be naturally resistant to their feeding process." Before Webb could respond, Marcus's neural implant activated again. This time, the Queen's voice carried an undertone of amusement. "Clever little scientist. Yes, you are beginning to understand. Your species is unique, Marcus Chen. In all my centuries of conquest, I have never encountered a race that could resist our influence." Marcus looked up at the ceiling, addressing the voice in his head. "That's why you want me. Not for romance or companionship. You want to study me." "Oh, my dear human, you wound me." Her laughter was like crystal breaking. "Though you are not entirely wrong. For 900 years, I have fed on the life essence of my subjects. They worship me, fear me, love me, all because my presence compels them to do so. But you choose. And choice, I have learned, is the rarest delicacy in the universe." Through the viewport, Marcus could see movement among the alien fleet. Smaller ships were detaching and heading toward Earth's surface. His heart clenched with fear for his home world. "What are those ships doing?" he demanded. "Learning," came the reply. "My scouts are studying your people just as you are studying us. They will not harm anyone. I have given strict orders. But I must understand what makes humanity so resilient." Marcus pulled up the station's communication array and opened a channel to Earth. The response was immediate chaos. Reports were flooding in from around the globe of alien vessels appearing over major cities, but true to Lyralay's word, they weren't attacking. Instead, they were simply observing, scanning, collecting data. "Dr. Chen," came a voice from Earth's Defense Command. "We need you to buy us more time. Our military analysts estimate we need at least 72 hours to prepare any kind of defense." Marcus almost laughed. 3 days to prepare against technology that was centuries ahead of theirs. It was typical human optimism in the face of impossible odds. "I'll do what I can," he replied, then switched back to his mental communication with the Queen. "Your Majesty, I have a proposition." "Oh, how delightful. Proceed." "You say you've never encountered resistance to your power. That makes humanity valuable to you, correct? Not just me, but all of us?" There was a pause that stretched long enough to make Marcus nervous. When she replied, her voice carried a new intensity. "You are suggesting something dangerous, human. Something that could change the balance of power in this galaxy." "I'm suggesting a partnership instead of a conquest," Marcus said boldly. "You want to understand what makes humans special? Then work with us, not over us." The Queen's presence suddenly intensified in his mind, and Marcus felt as if she were examining his very soul. The sensation was neither pleasant nor entirely unpleasant, but it left him feeling exposed in ways he'd never experienced. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Even now, facing annihilation, you negotiate from a position of strength. Tell me, Marcus Chen, what makes you believe you have anything to offer a being who has ruled star systems since before your civilization learned to write?" Marcus took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would determine humanity's future. "Because you're bored," he said simply. "1,000 years of absolute power, of subjects who fear and worship you without choice. You're the ultimate predator in a galaxy full of prey, and that's made you lonely. But humans don't just roll over and submit. We fight back, even when we can't win. We surprise you." The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus began to wonder if he'd overplayed his hand. Then, unexpectedly, the Queen's laughter filled his mind, not the crystalline sound from before, but something warmer, more genuine. "You truly are remarkable," she said. "Very well, Marcus Chen. I will accept your proposition, with conditions." "Name them." "First, you will still come with me, not as a conquered subject, but as my consultant. You will help me understand your species, and in return, I will share knowledge of the galaxy with yours." Marcus felt his heart sink. He'd hoped to avoid leaving Earth entirely. "And second?" "Your world will become a protectorate of my empire. Not conquered, not enslaved, but protected. There are forces in this galaxy that would see humanity destroyed simply for being different. Under my protection, your people will have time to grow strong enough to defend themselves." It wasn't the victory Marcus had hoped for, but it wasn't defeat either. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" "Because," came the reply, accompanied by a mental image of the Queen smiling. "Breaking faith with the one being in the galaxy who can surprise me would be remarkably stupid, and I have not survived 1,000 years by being stupid." Marcus looked around the observation deck. At Lieutenant Webb and the other personnel who had become like family to him during their months in space. He thought of Earth below, blue and vulnerable and full of people who were counting on him to make the right choice. "I need to speak with my people," he said, "to explain the situation." "Of course. You have 6 hours remaining. Use them wisely." The mental connection closed, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the weight of an impossible decision. Over the next several hours, Marcus found himself in heated discussions with Earth's leadership. Presidents, prime ministers, and military commanders all had opinions about what he should do. Some wanted him to refuse outright and die fighting. Others urged him to accept any terms that would keep humanity alive. But it was a message from his sister that finally helped him make up his mind. "Marcus," came Sarah's voice through the quantum communicator. "I know you're scared. We all are. But you've spent your whole life studying alien life, dreaming about the day we'd meet other species. Maybe this isn't how you imagined it would happen, but it's happening. And if anyone can figure out how to make the best of this situation, it's you." She paused, and he could hear his young nephew in the background asking when Uncle Marcus was coming home. "Besides," she continued with forced lightness. Someone needs to keep an eye on this vampire queen and make sure she doesn't get too comfortable ruling over humans. Who better than the most stubborn xenobiologist in the system? That decided it. Marcus opened the communication channel to Lirelai. I accept your terms, he said, but I have a few conditions of my own. Naturally, you would not be human if you did not attempt to negotiate. First, I want regular contact with Earth, daily reports, the ability to return if needed. Second, I want human representatives involved in any decisions that affect my people. And third, he took a deep breath. I want to know why. Really why. Why search the galaxy for 1,000 years? Why me specifically? There was another long pause. Then, to Marcus's surprise, he felt the Queen's presence not just in his mind, but approaching the station physically. Some things, she said, are better explained in person. 20 minutes later, Queen Lirelai stood once again in the observation deck. This time, she wasn't surrounded by guards or wrapped in power and majesty. She looked almost normal, still impossibly beautiful and clearly not human, but there was something vulnerable in her expression. 1,000 years ago, she began, I was not a queen. I was a soldier in service to the Valtharian Empire, fighting in a war that had raged for centuries. We were losing, pushed back by an enemy that seemed to multiply faster than we could destroy them. She moved to the viewport, staring out at the stars. In desperation, our scientists created a weapon, a virus that would enhance our natural energy absorption abilities, making us powerful enough to turn the tide. But it did more than that. It made us dependent on the life force of others to survive. We became parasites. Marcus felt a chill of understanding. The enemy you were fighting, they survived? They thrived, Lirelai confirmed. While we became scattered predators hiding in the dark corners of space, they built a galactic confederation. They hunt us now whenever we reveal ourselves. We are the monsters in their children's bedtime stories. So you've been searching for allies. Not allies, she corrected. Hope. Every species we've encountered either falls under our influence immediately or flees in terror. But your people, you resist our power naturally. You could be the weapon we need to reclaim our place in the galaxy. The honesty in her voice surprised Marcus. This wasn't the imperious queen from earlier, but a being who had been running and hiding for 1,000 years. Or, Marcus said carefully, we could find another way. Help you break free from what you've become. Lirelai turned to look at him, her red eyes wide with something that might have been hope. You would do that? Try to cure us? It's what humans do, Marcus replied with a slight smile. We see problems and we fix them. Sometimes stupidly, sometimes brilliantly, but we always try. For the first time since this all began, Queen Lirelai looked truly surprised. Perhaps, she said slowly, I chose my potential mate more wisely than I knew. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the laboratory aboard Lirelai's flagship, watching as human and Valtharian scientists worked side by side on what might be the most important research project in galactic history. The sight still amazed him. Beings who had been mortal enemies were now collaborating to solve a problem that had seemed impossible. The protein synthesis is stabilizing, reported Dr. Elena Vasquez, one of the human biochemists who had volunteered to join the research team. The Valtharian cellular structure is actually adapting to the modified energy matrix. Across the lab, Zephyr, one of Lirelai's oldest advisors, nodded approvingly at a holographic display. The hunger diminishes with each successful test. For the first time in centuries, I can go days without feeding. Marcus smiled as he made notes on his tablet. The breakthrough had come from the most human source imaginable, stubbornness and refusal to accept that some problems couldn't be solved. The door to the laboratory whispered open, and Queen Lyra Ley entered. Over the past months, she had changed as much as her people. The imperious ruler was still there, but she had developed something Marcus recognized as curiosity. She asked questions now, rather than simply commanding answers. "How goes our great experiment?" she asked, moving to stand beside Marcus. "Better than we hoped," he replied. "The combination of human genetic material and Valtharian energy manipulation is creating exactly the reaction we theorized. Your people won't need to feed on others anymore." Lyra Lai's expression was complex, hope mixed with disbelief and something that might have been fear. "And the side effects?" "Minimal," Marcus assured her. "Some loss of the more aggressive energy abilities, but increased resistance to injury and disease. Your people will still be long-lived and powerful, just not dependent on others for survival." She was quiet for a long moment, watching her people work alongside humans with an efficiency that would have been impossible under the old ways. "There is news from the Outer Rim," she said finally. "The hegemony has detected our presence here. They are sending a war fleet." Marcus felt his blood chill. The hegemony, the alien confederation that had driven the Valtharians into exile, represented everything humanity might one day face in the galaxy: aggressive, numerous, and utterly ruthless toward any species they considered a threat. "How long do we have?" he asked. 3 weeks, perhaps less. 200 ships of the line, equipped with weapons designed specifically to counter our abilities. Lyra Lai's voice was carefully controlled, but Marcus could hear the old fear underneath. "They will not stop with us. Once they discover humanity's potential, your world will be next." Around the laboratory, the mixed teams of scientists had stopped working to listen. The humans looked determined, while the Valtharians seemed to shrink into themselves, the old pattern of hiding and running reasserting itself. But Marcus was already thinking, his mind racing through possibilities. This was what humans did best. Faced with impossible odds, they found ways to make the impossible possible. "How many of your people have been successfully treated with the cure?" he asked. "Nearly half the crew of this ship," Zephyr reported. "Perhaps 300 individuals." "And how many humans do we have in the fleet?" 50 researchers and advisors, Lyra Lei replied, confused by the direction of his questions. Marcus nodded, an idea forming in his mind that was either brilliant or completely insane. Knowing humans, it was probably both. "I need to speak with Earth immediately," he said. "And I need you to gather every Valtharian captain in the fleet." 2 hours later, the main conference room of the flagship buzzed with tension. Valtharian nobles, ship captains, and warriors filled one side of the room, while human military advisors and scientists occupied the other. At the head of the table sat Queen Lyra Lei and Marcus, an unlikely partnership that had somehow become the focal point for two species' survival. "The situation is simple," Marcus began, his voice carrying the calm authority he'd developed over months of negotiations. "The hegemony is coming with a force designed to destroy the Valtharians and anyone allied with them. Traditional tactics won't work. They know too much about your abilities and weaknesses." Captain Thane, one of the oldest Valtharian warriors, leaned forward. "Then we run, as we always have. Find another dark corner of the galaxy to hide in." "No," Marcus replied firmly. "Running didn't work for 1,000 years. It's not going to work now. But I have another idea." He activated a holographic display showing the approaching hegemony fleet alongside tactical analyses of their ships and weapons. "The hegemony has spent centuries designing weapons to counter energy-based attacks and psychic influence. They're prepared for everything the Valtharians traditionally throw at them, but they've never fought humans." General Patricia Hawkins, Earth's military representative, raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Chen, with all respect, our weapons technology is centuries behind theirs." "Our weapons technology, yes," Marcus agreed, "but not our tactical thinking. Humans fight differently than anyone else in the galaxy. We're unpredictable, adaptive, and we have one advantage that no one expects. He paused, looking around the room at both species. We fight dirty. Over the next week, the combined fleet underwent a transformation that would have been impossible under traditional military doctrine. Human engineers worked with Valtharian energy manipulators to create hybrid weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien power. Valtharian warriors trained alongside human tactical specialists, learning concepts like asymmetrical warfare, guerrilla tactics, and what humans cheerfully called creative cheating. The most important change, however, was in the Valtharians themselves. As more of them received the cure, they began to change in ways that went beyond the physical. Without the constant need to feed on others, they started to think differently, to plan beyond simple survival. It's remarkable, Lyra confided to Marcus as they stood on the bridge, watching their mixed crews work together. For so long, we were defined by our hunger. Now, for the first time in centuries, we can think about what we want to become instead of what we need to survive. That's very human of you, Marcus replied with a smile. Perhaps, she said, that is not such a bad thing to be. When the hegemony fleet arrived, they found exactly what they expected. A small Valtharian force hiding behind a minor planet's moon, apparently trapped and ready for elimination. What they didn't expect was for the hiding ships to suddenly split apart, revealing that each Valtharian vessel had been concealing 3 smaller human craft. The battle that followed became known as the Miracle of Kepler 442. Human ships, too small to be efficiently targeted by weapons designed for much larger vessels, swarmed through the hegemony formation like angry wasps. Valtharian energy weapons modified with human targeting systems struck with precision the aliens had never encountered, and most importantly, the combined fleet fought with a coordination that confused and frustrated enemies who expected either predatory individuality or hive-minded conformity. But the real surprise came when the hegemony attempted to use their psychic suppressors, weapons designed to shut down Valtharian mental abilities. Instead of disabling the enemy, the suppressors seemed to make the human Valtharian teams fight even more effectively. Their psychic dampeners are actually helping us, reported Lieutenant Sarah Webb, now serving as Marcus's tactical coordinator. They're cutting off the Valtharian instinct to retreat and hide, leaving them with nothing but the aggressive tactics the humans taught them. Marcus grinned as he watched the tactical display. The hegemony fleet was in full retreat, having lost a third of their ships to a force they had expected to eliminate easily. Send a message to the hegemony commander, he told the communications officer. Tell them this is what happens when they threaten species under human protection. And let them know that both Earth and the Valtharian Empire are now part of the Human-Valtharian Alliance. Queen Lyrale raised an eyebrow at the name he'd chosen. The Human-Valtharian Alliance? I was not consulted about this name. You can change it later, Marcus replied. But right now, the galaxy needs to understand that we're not 2 separate species anymore. We're something new. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 442, Marcus stood in the gardens of New Valthar, the first city built by cured Valtharians on a planet they could finally call home without fear. Human children played alongside young Valtharians, their laughter echoing through crystal spires that reached toward the stars. Lyralai approached from behind, moving with the quiet grace that had become natural to her over the months they'd worked together. The Galactic Council has agreed to meet with our alliance, she reported. 50 species want to establish trade relationships, and another dozen are asking for protection from the hegemony. And the cure? Marcus asked. Every Valtharian who wishes it has been treated. We are free, Marcus. For the first time in a millennium, we are truly free. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their 2 species build something neither could have achieved alone. Finally, Lirelei spoke the question that had been hanging between them for months. "You know I still want you as my eternal mate," she said with characteristic directness. "The offer stands." Marcus smiled, turning to face the alien queen who had become his closest friend and partner in reshaping the galaxy. "I know," he replied, "and you know my answer hasn't changed. I'm honored, but I'm also human. We don't do eternal very well. We're too restless, too curious about what comes next." Lirelei nodded, though he could see disappointment in her ancient eyes. "I expected as much. It is, after all, a very human response. But," Marcus continued, "I'm not going anywhere. This alliance we've built, this new future we're creating, it's going to need both of us to make it work. So while I can't promise you eternity, I can promise you that as long as humanity and the Valtharians stand together, you'll never be alone again." The Queen smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it was entirely without the predatory edge that had once defined her species. "Perhaps," she said, "that is even better than eternity." Above them, the stars shone down on two species who had found something neither had been looking for, not conquest or survival, but partnership. And somewhere in the cosmic dance of galaxies, the universe took note that something new had been born from the meeting of an ancient queen and a stubborn human scientist. The future, as humans like to say, was about to get very interesting.